Hello, respected viewers. It's George from Ireland. Here I'm on Ebury Street in London, very close to Victoria Station. And here you can see the house where Harold Nicholson lived with his wife, Vita Sackville West, but usually known by her maiden name long after her marriage. So they're both well-known literary figures in the early 20th century, both from British upper-class families, her rather more established and affluent than his. Sorry, that's very non-you. Rich, as they would have said. They would have said it baldly. None of this bourgeoisie, faux delicacy. So he was born overseas. I can't remember where because his father's in the diplomatic corps, and he went to Wellington College, which had been established only 5 decades earlier, named in honour of the Prime Minister and General, the Duke of Wellington. So mostly for the sons of army officers. But anyway, so Harold Nicholson, he went to Balliol College, Oxford, where he got a third-class degree. If memory serves, he read greats. And then that was no bar to him joining the Foreign and Commonwealth Office and rising up the ranks. But in 1914, when the First World War broke out, he had the unenviable task of handing Prince Lichnowsky, the German ambassador, the United Kingdom's declaration of war. And Prince Lichnowsky was actually very well regarded in the United Kingdom. People were very sad to see him go. He was very much a dove within the German establishment. And later, in the middle of the First World War, he wrote a document saying what fools we were in a very strong position, we were already dominated Europe, why would we risk all that for more? We're the second largest economy in the world, there was absolutely no need to do this. King George V had proposed a peace conference in the summer of 1914, and that could have ironed out any dispute. There was absolutely no need to fight. And we're in this war that even if we win, it will be incredibly costly, but we may well lose. So that was somehow leaked and published in the United Kingdom to show, yes, that a well-placed German establishment figure recognised that Germany was the aggressor in this case. So anyway, he'd held various posts abroad, Harold Nicholson, in Madrid. He was an outspoken Francophile, an enthusiast for French poesy, writing a biography of a well-known French poet, and later in the 1920s in Iran, where he rather disliked Reza Shah, who overthrew the Qajar dynasty and made himself Badshah, Shah-in-Shah, whatever you want to call it, more like Shah-in-Shah in Farsi, King of Kings, and his wife was with him. So they were blessed with 2 children, Nigel and Benedict. But one of the fascinating things about this couple is they were bisexual and made little attempt to hide it. They were ethically non-monogamous before the term was invented, had an open marriage. And so it seems to be that their liaisons with others were only homosexual, as in, Harold Nicholson would not have an affair with a woman, I don't think. Vita Sackville West would not have an affair with a man, only one of her own sex. And they were actually devoted to each other, and bizarrely it made them happier. And despite their frequent infidelities, because they had permission, he was a willing cuckold, she was a willing cuckold. You said that, queen, whatever. They rubbed along very well. She loathed Reza Shah. She was very involved in planning for his coronation. What else? They had some delicate tasks to handle, such as the withdrawal of the Indian cavalrymen who used to accompany British diplomats around Tehran. They thought that was an unwarrantable intrusion upon Iranian sovereignty, and it was allowing the honour and dignity of a proud nation to be stained by allowing these soldiers to be there. What else about these two? So they were able to purchase Sissinghurst Castle in Kent and had marvellous gardens there. It's open to the public. I was there a few years ago, just as lockdown eased. What else about them? He went into politics as a Labour politician, a Labour MP for Leicester West in the 1930s and the 1940s. He was in Italy during the Second World War, was too old to fight. One of their sons, Nigel Nicholson, was in the Grenadier Guards. Their son Nigel famously wrote Portrait of a Marriage about his parents' marriage, and there was a lot of epistolary evidence there. So they were, for the time, shockingly frank about their very broad-minded approach to sexuality. Remember this being a time when male same-sex relations were criminal, no matter what the age of the participants. If it was a man over 21 with a man under 21, then the older party was severely punished on the basis that he had led the younger one into this supposed unnatural vice. What else about these two? So he died in the 1960s, Harold Nicholson. His wife survived him by quite a few years. and she'd had affairs with lots of well-known women, for example, Virginia Woolf. And this one, lesbianism was scarcely even mentioned. They say it wasn't criminalized, but actually it was, although I'm not sure aware of a single prosecution. It was decriminalized in the 1920s. They say partly because there's so many war widows after the First World War. Now, Queen Victoria said to believe it didn't exist, that no woman would do such a thing. The thing is, it's never mentioned by the Bible. The Bible doesn't declare it to be permissible or indeed impermissible. So it's never been seen as such a threat to society or so incompatible with heterosexuality as a male homosexuality is. Okay, so mutually exclusive perhaps is the term I'm looking for. And their son, Nigel, I read his book, Long Life. He was a Conservative MP, very much on the Liberal end of the party, an MP for Bournemouth in the 1950s. He served with the Grenadier Guards in the Second World War in Italy, if I got that right. But and then he believed that homosexuality should be decriminalised. His parents might have inspired him in that one, and that hanging should be done away with. Another thing is, he was against the military intervention in Suez in 1956, and that was unacceptable to the Conservative grassroots. So he was deselected. That ended his career. I can't remember what that other son Benedict did, but they were a fascinating couple. This is their townhouse here. Would we call this area? Well, no, it's not quite Mayfair. Victoria, really, coming on for Chelsea. So as you can see, they're quite affluent, though it wasn't as ruinously expensive to live here back then, because in this area you reckon the property costing at least £200,000 per bedroom. Yeah, so this is, what's that going to be, a 4-bedroom, 5-bedroom place? So easily £1 million, but bear in the fact it's a bit bigger, it's got a garden, you can add a few more 100,000. How historical it is, so that'd be worth 2 million quite easily. I think 3 million would be a more realistic estimate. So I recommend you dip into their writings. Very broad-minded people of the 20th century, and so she died in the early 1980s at what was then a very great age, having been born in 1894, if I got that right. So her family had opposed the marriage at first on the basis that he wasn't wealthy enough. They wanted him to marry someone whose family was better set up, was regarded as higher social status. Remember, you had to have parental permission to marry below the age of 21 in those days. You only need one parent's permission. If the mother said yes and the father said no, that was fine. Okay. So it says a lot about her reputation that she was always known as Vita Sackville West and not known by her married name even long after she married. So they were on the edges of the Bloomsbury set, that group of intellectuals, radicali and artists centered around Bloomsbury Square from roughly 1900 to 1950. They're more on the edge of it, as I say, partly because they were overseas a lot of the time with their diplomatic postings, and in those days a woman couldn't be a diplomat in her own right, could only be in the supporting role of spouse, so they could only move beyond the spousal role from the 1950s. Right, thank you so much for watching my video. Make sure you subscribe on Patreon, donate on PayPal, georgecallahan79@gmail.com. Goodbye.